Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born. If you're enjoying these innovation insights, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. By following the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast, you'll stay at the forefront of trends, strategies, and real-world examples that impact today's innovators. Well, today I'm really excited. My friend, I've been on his podcast before. He's now coming to join me. We've got Brad McDonald. He is a husband, a father, and a designer of leadership transformation. He's on a mission to develop 1 million leaders. He's a co-founder of Pattern Talent, the co-host of the Daily Leader podcast, and he's a certified executive coach who has spoken to hundreds of audiences and worked with amazing clients like the U.S. Army, Chick-fil-A, and City of Phoenix. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I can't wait to talk through some different leadership frameworks and just enjoy being here and being with your audience. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I so enjoyed, we had so much fun on your podcast, and I don't think I can have as much fun as I did when I was on your podcast, but we'll try. One of the things that I would love to know before we dive into some of the frameworks you have, which I think people are absolutely going to love, I would like to start by understanding a little bit more about how and why you became such a student of leadership, because that's what's cool about you is not only do you teach leaders and you teach leadership, but you're a student of leadership, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah, I love that question. I think for me, I grew up in a home where my mom and dad demonstrated leadership. So from a very young age, I watched my father as a pastor and a preacher speak on stage on a weekly basis. I got to hear about how things were going in the church from an organizational standpoint, from the administrative standpoint. Then he worked for the denomination, and in that environment, for people who don't know what that means, maybe don't worry about it. It just means that there's a large group of churches and lots of dynamics that go on from an organizational standpoint, both in the authority of the system and the structure, but also from an influence standpoint, how that network functions and how they get work done together as a group of different churches. And so I got to learn a lot about how leadership works, how you get things done when you don't have any authority or when you have a lot of authority. And so seeing my parents navigate those environments was definitely a big part of me being a student of leadership when I didn't even know it as a kid and a teenager. And then I attended a gap year program that was founded by the owners of Chick-fil-A, the Cathy family. And through that experience, we were certified in a kind of unique servant leadership model that was created by Chick-fil-A for corporate staff and as a resource, an optional resource to owner operators and team members. And so through that experience, I learned a lot about what leadership is, how it functions, and particularly servant leadership. And that really sparked the passion in me for learning and understanding how I could be a leader.
Hmm.
And I never really put that book down. And in fact, I just sort of said, if I'm here and I'm spinning on this rock through the galaxy, and I'm trying to figure out why I'm here and what I'm doing, I'm just kind of going to pick leadership, and I'm going to go just throw everything that I have from a work and career standpoint at understanding this topic and at helping support the people who lead in organizations and families and ministries and businesses day in and day out. And that's what I've been up to, especially for the last few years. So,
I love that. I love that answer. That's such a cool answer. And not everybody can point to their home environment being what caused them to lead. But when you can point to that, that's actually really, really cool. I'd love to talk about these critical 4 areas that you talk about in your leadership work, kind of your leadership development format. You talk about character, chemistry, competence, and capacity. I would love to know, how you came up with those 4. What are those 4 all about, and why are they essential to leading?
yeah, absolutely. I think that I would love to hear your insights on this too. So don't hesitate to jump in and maybe ask a question or share something that you've experienced as a leader and as someone who's developing leaders across organizations all over the world, I think that oftentimes what comes to our mind when we think about leadership is the bad experiences that we've had with leaders, right? It's the things that we've experienced that have somehow hurt us or had a negative impact on us, and we've reacted against those things.
Mhm.
And so as I was thinking about, okay, how do I develop a leader?
Yeah.
What would I do if I had a prospective leader in front of me, a leader candidate that really needed top to bottom development in order to make them the most effective leader that they could possibly be?
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, I would want them to be able to think critically and to ask and answer some key questions. And the
Mhm.
first one that comes to mind for me deals with character, and it's being able to explore the question, who am I?
Mhm.
And oftentimes when we think about leadership, we think about what the leader does, and we can't really establish what the leader does without establishing first who they are, right? Because so much of what we do as a person comes from our sense of identity, right? The way that we understand ourselves. I also found, Natalie, that leaders with low self awareness and low emotional intelligence can be quite damaging.
Yeah.
And not usually because it's intentional. In fact, oftentimes it's unintentional. But that unintentionality makes or breaks leaders, especially leaders who are leading organizations of large scale and scope.
Mhm.
So that, lack of emotional intelligence, lack of self-awareness is one of those key areas where we have to be able to determine, like, this is who I am as a leader. These
Yeah.
are my strengths. These are my weaknesses. This is my shadow side. And I'm well aware of how that shadow side operates. I've embraced it, and I've understood that I may not be able to cast my demons away completely, but I can learn how to manage them, and more importantly, leading to our second question, like, I can learn how to have other people with me that guard these weaknesses and prevent me from being able to do damage with them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of question number 1.
Well, I wanna jump in on that one just for a second because,
Yeah, please.
man, you this one is interesting. Like, I have seen leaders blow their lid in tense situations
Mhm.
with a lot of people in the room, and what's unfortunate is from that moment, they lost credibility.
Right.
And people don't trust them the same way. They won't follow them the same way. So just anchoring on that first piece of character. I mean, to me, when I think about character, for sure it's humility and integrity and consistency. But I once had this leader draw this equation out for me that basically said consistency over time equals trust. And
So
that
good.
felt right because somebody can be an awesome leader and then in one moment they can blow it, they can blow their lid and everyone's like, "Man, I don't want to follow that person anymore. That's not somebody that I can trust. That's not somebody that's anchored in emotional intelligence." And so how do you follow a leader that isn't leading well, right? So I love that you kind of brought that emotional intelligence piece to the forefront because I've seen it hurt leaders more often than not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those levers that is so long and so powerful
Yeah.
that if you don't have that lever pulled, you could have so many fantastic leadership skills and traits, but because that one is not dialed in, it is so limiting
Yeah.
to the rest of those qualities that we typically think of when we think of a great leader, right? Like
Mhm.
decisiveness or charisma, risk taking. I mean, we could list those on and on, but
Mhm.
man, low self-awareness is a huge problem when it's
Yeah.
when it's present. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting. You bring up something interesting, the issue of trust. So question number 2 that deals with chemistry is, how do I build? Sometimes we use the term cultivate
Mhm.
high trust relationships.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I think about chemistry, I think about likability. And it's kind of more of a sugar stick, kind of cotton candy version of that term and what we mean by that. Really, when I think about, the chemistry that I have with Natalie or the chemistry that I have with one of my clients or another colleague of mine, really what I want, what I'm after there I'm after that idea of trust.
Mhm.
Do I believe that Natalie is who she says she is and is capable of doing the things that she says she will do? And my ability as a leader to build relationships where we reciprocate an understanding and a trust of one another is almost as important as my ability to know thyself, as Socrates said, right?
Wow.
So I think that if a leader can have a strong sense, and not only strong, but very clear sense of identity, and they have the capabilities to build high trust relationships, they have broadly set themselves apart from a majority of the leaders in the workforce. So just from like a competitive advantage standpoint, if you're thinking about career, or you're thinking about the quality of your business and your ability to deliver on products and services, like that's got to be, in my opinion, 75, 60 to 75% of the leadership equation is those two big questions.
That is a lot. There is both caught and taught when it comes to the idea of
Mm,
chemistry and how do you cultivate relationships with people. That's not something you learn in a, college class, if you will. It takes a
agreed.
lot of time, it takes a lot of trial and error, but I think it is the differentiator, right? When you see a leader who can walk into a room and influence the room and build relationships quickly and create that likability factor. And a lot of that with chemistry, I really believe is, and I talk to leaders about this all the time, is if we are insecure and we walk into a room full of people and we're bringing in that insecurity, that's actually what other people are reading, and sometimes that can feel like a lack of likability. But if we can be secure in ourself and walk into a room ready to serve other people, ready to meet and greet and learn more about other people, walking in with curiosity, it creates a different lens for why we're even in the room in the first place. And I had this leader once tell me this. He said, "Hey, think about your first 30 seconds in the room." He's like, he's like, "You're not serious, but people kind of think you're serious." So he said, when you walk into a room and you're very serious and very quiet, he's like, people can kind of read that off of you. He said, instead, why don't you think about your first 30 seconds in the room being warming the room up? Walk around the room, say hello to people, ask them how their weekend was, like get to know them. These all seem like things that are common sense. But for an introvert, it's
Mm,
more common to walk into a room, go find your seat, and, like, not make a scene, right? So thinking differently about why you're showing up as a leader in that room and how can you see other people, I love that because that leans into that likability, that chemistry you're talking about. And some people, it comes naturally. Others of us have to work at it, but the idea is the same.
yes, yes. I'm so glad that you use the term curiosity, right? Because one of the biggest differentiators between leaders who build trust and leaders who always stay right on the edge of, can I trust this person, is their ability to demonstrate genuine, authentic curiosity about the people around them. And I've heard it compared to sales before, right? Think about the best salesperson that you've ever experienced or the worst salesperson that you've ever experienced. The best salespeople take 15, 30 seconds at the beginning of that conversation to get really clear on, what does the person who's buying need? What do
Mhm.
they want? What are they after? Where do they find value in this interaction? And I think great leaders have cultivated a genuine, authentic curiosity about the people in their life and the needs of those people, and
Yeah.
that they see their role as a leader in terms of serving and meeting those needs, not just hitting a goal or a KPI or achieving this kind of out there vision, but it's kind of an inward question first, which is, who are these constituents around me? Where are they hoping to go? And how can I facilitate that advancement, not just my own agenda?
Yeah. And that's such a fine line. I'll tell you a quick story. I was once at a retreat with a team. The team was struggling. and our leader had a coach, the team had a coach. It was like 2 coaches there. Never seen it before. And we were doing some get to know you activities, and I didn't feel safe to, like, say the real story, so I shared kind of a silly story because I didn't wanna share, like, a real heartfelt story. And I'll be honest, later on, I was glad I didn't, because about halfway through the meeting, we were trying to still do get to know you stuff, and the leader just pipes up and says, "What's it gonna take for them to deliver what I want them to deliver, when I want them to deliver it?" And we all just paused and said, What why are we doing these exercises to get to know each other if that's not really what you care about?" Like, we're never gonna get to know each other under these conditions. And so it was just that idea that, when you're just driving towards only the goal and you're not driving towards true curiosity, true relationship, getting to know people for who they are, knowing who their kids are, knowing more about them. When we don't do that, people they pick up on it. It's like a spidey sense, right? You notice it, you feel that, and you're never really going to open up in that environment and be yourself because you're kind of guarding yourself. And
Totally.
unfortunately, that leader showed us that was probably the right move to guard our true answers on certain topics because she really wasn't open to hearing what we truly felt and thought.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the third question too, because oftentimes when we're imagining leadership, we're thinking about this competence question, right?
Yeah.
And I can imagine that leader was looking at all of you saying, where is the competence,
Mhm.
right? Where is the skill, right? Where is the delivery on the goal or the KPI or whatever vision you were trying to manifest as a group?
Yeah.
And a better question to ask is not necessarily what are my skills
Mhm.
or what are the skills around me, but asking what is my unique value contribution?
Hmm.
How do I uniquely bring something to this team, this organization, this client as Natalie that nobody else in the world can bring?
Mhm.
Not because you're better or they're worse, but because you're unique, because you're different, because no one on the planet, or we have to include Mars in that as well, because we're
We're going there.
in the, we're in the process of that. So let's not forget Mars. None of the Martians are Natalie, right? And in light of that, you bring something unique to every leadership environment that you're in. And being able to know that, to name that,
Mm.
and to help the people around you understand what they get when they get Natalie is absolutely critical to the quality, to the scale and the scope of your leadership. And that has so much more depth than the results question, than
Mhm.
the skill sets question. There's so much more texture to every human being sitting around the table when
Right.
we learn how to activate those skill sets from the point of unique value contribution instead of simply just, result achievement.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that result achievement isn't critical for business. Of course it is. We've got to make money. We've all got
Mhm.
bills to pay. We've all got shareholders to deliver for, right? And I don't know about you, but I don't miss my bank payments, right?
That's
Like
right.
I just make those on time,
Right.
right? So we have to do those things.
Yeah.
But the vantage point that we approach them can be something with a ton of depth and texture like value contribution,
Mhm.
or it can simply be, a task that I'm skilled in. And I would much rather the former.
That's so good. And I think what this leans into is the idea that, we know a large swath of the workforce is disengaged. Like we know that those numbers always hover
Oh,
up in that 70% range. But
scary.
man, when someone is engaged, right? When you take that 30% that is engaged, they're probably doing 80% of the work for the organization. And when you can engage people in a way where not only do they give you their just not just their time in their hands, but their heart, their head and their heart, those are the people that will run through a wall for you. And so it's so crazy to think that if you'll engage someone's heart and their head, their hands just naturally follow. But if we just try to get their hands, we'll never get their head and their heart. And so much
Well said.
of leadership is cracking the code on what it looks like for each person as an individual And when we miss that, or when we mistake that for, at the end of the day, most people, they do need to pay the bank payment. That's why they're there. But you can build so much more purpose and so much more meaning into the work that they do. But it requires that curiosity to know them, not treat them like a number, but treat them like a person. And so I love that we're talking about this because it's so multi-layered in what it really means to be an effective leader.
That's right. One of the frameworks that we use is a training and development framework. And in that training and development framework, the second stage, it moves from information to imitation.
Hmm.
And in my experience coaching and consulting with leaders, what I find is that oftentimes the imitation portion of leadership development and particularly training is so time intensive. It requires thought. It requires relationship building. It requires a level of investment that goes far above and beyond, I'm going to buy a course online. I'm going to put a book on their desk. I'm going to send them to a training seminar. It requires that, I'm side by side getting the, windshield time, right? As we used to say when we still met in person, we used to have windshield time.
Mhm.
And to the point that you're making, the teaching versus catching aspects of leadership development are so critical, even, not just in character and competency, but not just in character and chemistry, but also in competency.
Mhm.
When we want someone to learn and recognize what their unique value contribution is, we have to give them opportunities to be side by side, to be face to face, to be engaging in intimate moments where they're actually in a safe place to practice imitating. Can I do what this person does? What makes me different from them?
Mhm.
Allowing that comparison and contrast experience to play out in real time. And there's an author that I love named Timothy Clark. He wrote a book called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. And it's a book I use a lot with clients. I give it away a lot because I think it frames up so much of what we're trying to achieve in sort of the new era of leadership development, where we actually care about self-awareness, where empathy matters, and we're trying to learn how to balance empathy and relational needs with result getting, right? Well, so much of that learner safety that we're all looking for is found in imitation. It's found in the ability for me to be side by side with Natalie. Maybe I see you lead a debrief session with a group of executives, or maybe I watch you execute a training on how innovation works and how it can be specifically applied to a business unit in a company you're consulting with. And maybe I've never done that before. And maybe next time around you say, okay, Brad, it's your turn, right? And you are the guide on the side for me now. That is where real skill sets are built. Real durable skill sets are built as leaders. And it just requires that next level of investment that can be so difficult sometimes for us as leaders to make.
This is so good. I want to talk about the area of capacity. I feel like that's such an underrated conversation when we talk about leadership of what is the current capacity versus the potential capacity. And so many leaders, so many people have potential capacity inside of them that we just have yet to even tap into. And so I feel like this is such an important leadership conversation, not to just focus on the capacity someone has today and to just see them for that, but to really look at their potential if they're put in the right situations, the right guidance, like you talked about. Show me how to do it and then let me do it. You give me feedback. Let's talk about that a little bit.
I love that. I love the way that you framed the question. Simon Sinek, all-time favorite leadership quote. He says that the greatest test of a leader is their ability to develop another leader. Robert Greenleaf, who's often credited as sort of the father of servant leadership, says something to the effect that the servant leader's role is really about producing more, better, autonomous servant leaders. Right? That the role of the leader is actually not to produce more followers,
Hmm.
although that may be what's oftentimes modeled for us.
Right.
It's not to produce automatons who just obey commands, right? That's not a win for us as a leader. In fact, that's short-termism. Like that's
Mhm.
quarterly earnings stuff.
Yeah.
We know, we all know better than that, right? What we know intuitively as human beings, that our capacity as people is actually very, very limited. It's limited by time. It's limited by energy. It's
Mhm.
limited by a variety of economic demands.
Yep.
It's limited by our own stages of development and learning, depending on, where we find ourselves over the course of our life. And so if you want infinite capacity as a leader, right? If you want to really tap into your potential, it's actually found in the people around you and in your ability to influence and to empower them to be all that they are capable of being. So for me, what I ask when I'm helping a leader process capacity is, what is the power, the capacity that I have to develop myself and to see my own personal capacity increase and to develop the capacity of others, because that's where I unlock true unlimited potential. That's where the future that I imagine for myself becomes a reality.
I love that as a measurement for our own leadership. As a matter of fact, as you were talking, I thought about one of the best leaders I ever worked for. His name was Mike, and he had a tree in our department. And the tree was actually all the different people that had left his department and gotten promoted and moved to other department. And there was
So cool.
probably like, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, 80 names on there. It was impressive. And he kind of became like the leadership pipeline of the organization. Like, they knew if they came through his department, they would have the culture, they would have the grit, they would have the resilience to move to another department and be successful. And so I love that as a lens on leadership of who are we developing and investing in, and who's, you know, going as far as us or maybe even far beyond us, which is our hope. If you're a great leader, you're hoping that the people that you've invested in go far beyond you. You're hoping that what you've invested is such great ground that it just grows beyond what you even thought
Yes.
was possible.
Yes.
And so I love that example. What final thoughts would you have for your leader for our leaders today? And let me say this. I cannot believe we're already out of time, so you're just gonna have to come back and join us again
Please.
because
I love it.
like only this is the first time I've only gotten to one question, but the question that I asked you was so rich. It was like a four-part question, but you'll have
Yeah.
to come back and join us. What are your final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, this is a fun framework, right? These 4 questions are very powerful. And this is what I do with my clients every day is we work through the 4 questions. And I know that that's what you do with your clients too. In one way or another, you're processing through one aspect of what does it mean to be, a skilled, emotionally intelligent, multiplying leader, right? I think one important reminder is that, in business and in organizational leadership, the metal hits the anvil bare, right? That's a powerful image of a hammer coming down on another metal object, right? And what happens, right? Sparks fly.
Mhm.
These questions come at us in anger, in frustration, in businesses that are failing, in really difficult economic supply chain. You know, we've been lied to, we've been deceived, we've been bested by our competitors. Like that's how these questions arise for us and occur for us in our lives. They don't come in order. They don't come in a way that feels good most of the time. And so I think what we have to do is we just have to have like fresh eyes. We have to have that kind of rookie mentality as leaders and especially as people who are in these helping roles like you and I are, where we look into organizations from the outside and we try to help them see what's right in front of them, but they're blind to. We have to recognize that like it's the context is chaos. And my encouragement to each of you as you're listening to this, as you're processing through your own answer to these questions is don't do them alone.
Mm.
Be in community. Call Natalie, email Natalie, send me a message on LinkedIn. Reach out to a mentor that you have trust with. Reach out to a friend, someone else in your organization that you know has your best at heart and process these in community because that's where, in my opinion, you will find the best answers and the answers that will really be transformational for your leadership.
That's so good. Man, Brad, you are full of just wisdom. And where can people find and follow you, learn more about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love that. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, Brad McDonald. My company is Pattern Talent. You can go to patterntalent.co and you can learn all about what we do. And you can also reach out to Natalie and she'll connect you as well. So I would love to meet each and every one of your listeners and have the opportunity to get to know them a little bit and serve them where it's appropriate.
Awesome. Well, Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Anytime.
To our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership. And visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.
Hey, my new book is out, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. Click on the link to learn more. And don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.